Hey guys, welcome to day 224 of the Bible in a Year Plan. Today, we will be reading Ezekiel 40 through 42 and John 14. If you need to read more about this plan, visit the High Quality Gospel website with a link in the description of the episode and the podcast. Please leave a like and follow the podcast to stay up to date with new episodes. Now, let's begin with reading Ezekiel 40. In the 25th year of our exile, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after Jerusalem had been captured, on that very day the Lord's hand was on me, and he brought me there. In visions of God, he took me to the land of Israel and set me down on a very high mountain. On its southern slope was a structure resembling a city. He brought me there, and I saw a man whose appearance was like bronze, with a linen cord and a measuring rod in his hand. He was standing by the city gate. He spoke to me. Son of man, look with your eyes, listen with your ears, and pay attention to everything I am going to show you, for you have been brought here so that I might show it to you. Report everything you see to the house of Israel. Now there was a wall surrounding the outside of the temple. The measuring rod in the man's hand was 6 units of 21 inches. Each unit was the standard length plus 3 inches. He measured the thickness of the wall structure. It was 10.5 feet, and its height was the same. Then he came to the gate that faced east and climbed its steps. He measured the threshold of the gate. It was 10.5 feet deep. One threshold was 10.5 feet deep. Each recess was 10.5 feet long and 10.5 feet deep, and there was a space of 8 3/4 feet between the recesses. The inner threshold of the gate on the temple's side, next to the gate's portico, was 10.5 feet. Next he measured the gate's portico. It was 14 feet, and its jambs were 3.5 feet. The gate's portico was on the temple side. There were 3 recesses on each side of the east gate, which the same measurements, and the jambs on either side also had the same measurements. Then he measured the width of the gate's entrance. It was 17.5 feet, while the width of the gate was 22 3/4 feet. There was a barrier of 21 inches in front of the recesses on both sides, and the recesses on each side were 10.5 feet square. Then he measured the gate from the roof of one recess to the roof of the opposite one. The distance was 43 3/4 feet. The openings of the recesses faced each other. Next he measured the porch, 105 feet. The distance from the front of the gate to the entrance to the front of the gate's portico on the inside was 87.5 feet. The recesses and their jambs had beveled windows all around the inside of the gate. The porticos also had windows around the inside. Each jamb was decorated with palm trees. Then he brought me into the outer court, where there were chambers and paved surface laid out all around the court. 30 chambers faced the pavement, which flanked the courtyard's gates, and corresponded to the length of the gates. This was the lower pavement. Then he measured the distance from the front of the lower gate to the exterior front of the inner court. It was 175 feet. This was the east. Next, the north is described. He measured the gate of the outer court facing north, both its length and width. Its 3 recesses on each side. Its jambs and its portico had the same measurements as the first gate, 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. Its portico, its windows, portico, and palm trees had the same measurements as those of the gate that faced east. 7 steps led up to the gate, and its portico was ahead of them. The inner court had gate facing the north gate, like the one on the east. He measured the distance from gate to gate. It was 175 feet. He brought me to the south side, and there was also a gate on the south. He measured its jambs and portico. They had the same measurements as the others. Both the gate and its portico had windows all around, like the other windows. It was 87.5 feet long, 43 3/4 feet wide. Its stairway had 7 steps, and its portico was ahead of them. It had palm trees on the jambs, one on each side. The inner court had a gate on the south. He measured from gate to gate on the south. It was 175 feet. Then he brought me to the inner court through the south gate. When he measured the south gate, it had the same measurements as the others. Its recesses, jambs, and portico had the same measurements as the others. Both it and its portico had windows all around. It was 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. There were porticos all around, 43 3/4 feet long and 8 3/4 feet wide. Its portico faced the outer court, and its jambs were decorated with palm trees. Its stairway had 8 steps. Then he brought me to the inner court on the east side. When he measured the gate, it had the same measurements as the others. Its recesses, jambs, and portico had the same measurements as the others. Both it and the portico had windows all around. It was 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. Its portico faced the outer court, and its jambs were decorated with palm trees on each side. Its stairway had 8 steps. Then he brought me to the north gate. When he measured it, it had the same measurements as the others, as did its recesses, jambs, and portico. It also had windows all around. It was 87.5 feet long and 43 3/4 feet wide. Its portico faced the outer court, and its jambs were decorated with palm trees on each side. Its stairway had 8 steps. There was a chamber whose door opened into the gate's portico. The burnt offering was to be washed there. Inside the gate's portico there were 2 tables on each side, on which to slaughter the burnt offering, sin offering, and guilt offering. Outside, as one approaches the entrance of the north gate, there were 2 tables on one side, and 2 more tables on the other side of the gate's portico. So there were 4 tables inside the gate, and 4 outside, 8 tables in all on which the slaughtering was to be done. There were also 4 tables of cut stone for the burnt offering, each 31.5 inches long, 31.5 inches wide, and 21 inches high. The utensils used them to slaughter the burnt offerings and other sacrifices were placed on them. There were 3-inch hooks fastened all around the inside of the room, and the flesh of the offering was to be laid on the tables. Outside the inner gate, within the inner court, there were chambers for the singers, one beside the north gate facing south, and another beside the south gate facing north. Then the man said to me, "This chamber that faces south is for the priests who keep in charge of the temple. The chamber that faces north is for the priest who keeps charge of the altar. These are the sons of Zadok, the ones from the sons of Levi, who may approach the Lord to serve him." Next he measured the court. It was square, 175 feet long and 175 feet wide. The altar was in front of the temple. Then he brought me to the portico of the temple and measured the jambs of the portico. They were 8 3/4 feet thick on each side. The width of the gate was 24.5 feet, and the side walls of the gate were 5 1/4 feet wide on each side. The portico was 35 feet across and 21 feet deep, and 10 steps led up to it. There were pillars by the jambs, 1 on each side. Next he brought me to the great hall and measured the jambs. On each side the width of the jamb was 10.5 feet, the width of the entrance was 17.5 feet, and the side walls of the entrance were 8 3/4 feet wide on each side. He also measured the length of the great hall, 70 feet, and the width, 35 feet. He went inside the next room and measured the jambs at the entrance. They were 3.5 feet wide. The entrance was 10.5 feet wide, and the width of the entrance's side walls on each side was 12 1/4 feet. He then measured the length of the room adjacent to the great hall, 35 feet, and the width, 35 feet. And he said to me, "This is the most holy place." Then he measured that wall of the temple. It was 10.5 feet thick. The width of the side rooms all around the temple was 7 feet. The side rooms were arranged one above another in 3 stories of 30 rooms each. There were ledges on the wall of the temple all around to serve as supports for the side rooms, so that the supports would not be in the temple wall itself. The side rooms surrounded the temple, widened at each successive story, for the structure surrounding the temple went up by stages. This was the reason for the temple's broadness as it rose, and so one would go up from the lowest story to the highest by means of the middle one. I saw that the temple had a raised platform surrounding it. Its foundation for the side rooms was 10.5 feet high. The thickness of the outer wall of the side rooms was 8 3/4 feet. The free space between the side rooms of the temple and the outer chambers was 35 feet wide, all around the temple. The side rooms opened to the free space, one entrance towards the north and another to the south. The area of free space was 8 3/4 feet wide all around. Now the building that faced the temple yard towards the west was 122.5 feet wide. The wall of the building was 8 3/4 feet thick on all sides, and the building's length was 157.5 feet. Then the man measured the temple. It was 175 feet long. In addition, the temple yard and the building, including its walls, were 175 feet long. The width of the front of the temple along with the temple yard to the east was 175 feet. Next he measured the length of the building facing the temple yard to the west, with its galleries on each side. It was 175 feet. The interior of the great hall and the porticos of the court, the thresholds, the beveled windows, and the balconies all around with their 3 levels opposite to the threshold, were overlaid with wood on all sides. They were paneled from the ground to the windows, but the windows were covered, reaching to the top of the entrance and as far as the inner temple and on the outside. On every wall all around, on the inside and outside, was a pattern, carved with cherubim and palm trees. There was a palm tree between each pair of cherubim. Each cherub had 2 faces, a human face turned towards the palm tree on one side, and a lion's face turned towards it on the other. They were carved throughout the temple on all sides. Cherubim and palm trees were carved from the ground to the top of the entrance and to the top of the great hall. The doorposts of the great hall were square, and the front of the sanctuary had the same appearance. The altar was made of wood, 5 1/4 feet high and 3.5 feet long. It had corners, and its length and sides were of wood. The man told me, "This is the table that stands before the Lord." The great hall and the sanctuary each had a double door, and each of the doors had 2 swinging panels. There were 2 panels for one door and 2 for the other. Cherubim and palm trees were carved on the doors of the great hall like those carved on the walls. There was a wooden canopy outside, in front of the portico. There were beveled windows and palm trees on both sides, on the side walls of the portico, the side rooms of the temple, and the canopies. Then the man led me out by way of the north gate into the outer court. He brought me to a group of chambers opposite to the temple yard and opposite to the building to the north, along with the length of chambers, which was 175 feet. There was an entrance on the north. The width was 87.5 feet. Opposite the 35-foot space belonging to the inner court and opposite the paved surface belonging to the outer court, the structure rose gallery by gallery in 3 tiers. In front of the chambers was a walkway towards the inside, 17.5 feet wide and 175 feet long, and their entrances were on the north. The upper chambers were narrower because the galleries took away more space from them than the lower and middle stories of the building, for they were arranged in 3 stories and had no pillars like the pillars of the courts. Therefore the upper chambers were set back from the ground more than the lower and middle stories. A wall on the outside ran in front of the chambers, parallel to them, towards the outer court. It was 87.5 feet long, for the chambers on the outer court were 87.5 feet long, while those facing the great hall were 175 feet long. At the base of the chambers there was an entryway on the east side as one enters them from the outer court. In the thickness of the wall of the court towards the south there was chambers facing the temple yard and the western building, with a passageway in front of them, just like the chambers that face north. Their length and width, as well as all their exits, measurements, and entrances, were identical. The entrance at the beginning of the passageway, the way in front of the corresponding wall as one enters on the east side, was similar to the entrances of the chambers that were on the south side. Then the man said to me, "The northern and southern chambers that face the courtyard are the holy chambers where the priest would approach the Lord, will eat the most holy offerings. There they would deposit the most holy offering, the grain offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings, for the holy place is holy. Once the priests have entered, they are not to go out from the holy area to the outer court until they have removed the clothes they minister in, for these are holy. They are to put on outer clothes before they approach the public area." When he finished measuring inside the temple complex, he led me out by the way of the gate that faced east, and measured all around the complex. He measured the east side with a measuring rod. It was 875 feet by the measuring rod. He measured the north side. It was 875 feet by the measuring rod. He measured the south side. It was 875 feet by the measuring rod. Then he turned to the west side and measured 875 feet by the measuring rod. He measured the temple complex on all 4 sides. It had a wall all around it, 875 feet long and 875 feet wide, to separate the holy from the common. Now we read John 14. "Don't let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? If I go away and prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you myself, so that where I am you may be also. You know the way to where I am going." "Lord," Thomas said, "we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way?" Jesus told him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will also know my Father. From now on, you do know him and have seen him." "Lord," said Philip, "show us the Father, and that's enough for us." Jesus said to him, "Have I been among you all this time, and you do not know me, Philip? The one who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Don't you believe that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me? The words I speak to you, I do not speak on my own. The Father who lives in me does his works. Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Otherwise, believe because of the works themselves. Truly I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and he will do even greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. Whatever you ask in my name, I will do it, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask me anything in my name, I will do it. If you love me, you will keep my commands, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another counselor to be with you forever. He is the Spirit of truth. The world is unable to receive him, because it doesn't see him or know him, but you do now know him, because he remains with you and will be within you. I will not leave you as orphans. I am coming to you. In a little while the world will no longer see me, but you will see me, because I live. You will live too. On that day you will know that I am in my Father. You are in me, and I am in you. The one who has my commands and keeps them, as the one who loves me, and the one who loves me will be loved by my Father. I also will love him and reveal myself to him." Judas, not Iscariot, said to him, "Lord, how is it you're going to reveal yourself to us and not to the world?" Jesus answered, "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word. My Father will love him, and he will come to him and make our home with him. The one who doesn't love me will not keep my words. The word that you hear is not mine, but is from the Father who sent me. I have spoken these things to you while I remain with you. But the Counselor, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you all things, and remind you of everything I have told you. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Don't let your heart be troubled or fearful. You have heard me tell you, I am going away, and I am coming to you. If you loved me, you would rejoice that I am going to the Father, because the Father is greater than I. I have told you now before it happens, so that when it does happen, you may believe. I will not talk with you much longer, because the ruler of the world is coming. He has no power over me. On the contrary, so that the world may know that I love the Father, I do as the Father commanded me. Get up, leave this place. On day 223, we read of Israel being restored, and in John, Jesus washed the disciples' feet, and Judas went to betray him. Today in Ezekiel, we see Ezekiel being given measurements for the new temple. When it comes to restoration, rebuilding the temple is the main symbol of that restoration. The temple is where God's Spirit dwelled, and when it was destroyed, it showed Israel that God is no longer with them. This is the biggest indicator of judgment. But if God is promising to restore Israel, He's also promising to restore the temple, a symbol of His presence. Here they will continue the sacrifices laid out in the law by Moses, and perform the daily duties of the priest once more. It is to be a symbol of the revival of Jerusalem and Israel, just as God has repeatedly promised. Here He will bring His people back to life, metaphorically, and allow them to worship Him and follow Him. But until that happens, they will live through their exile and judgment, then be welcomed back. We later see the second temple by Jesus' time. This second temple was larger and grander than the original. However, it was lacking in the Spirit of God. Before, God instituted the building of the tabernacle and the temple, and gave specific instructions so that the people could dwell with Him. However, the proper procedures must have been followed. The priests were the only ones allowed to perform sacrifices. The high priest was the only one to enter the Holy of Holies, and the Ark of the Covenant was the seat. Most of this stayed the same, but it was all without the Spirit of God. The new temple was not like the old. Even though it was greater, it was missing the Spirit of God. God's Spirit essentially left the temple, so that they would be reminded of their past sins, and as evidence that He would dwell within the people through the Holy Spirit. After Christ died, this was the Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit dwelled within the disciples and now dwells within us. In truth, the temple is just a building, especially the second one. But it's a building that all points to Christ and His final mission. In John, we see few teachings from Jesus. He first tells us not to lose heart. We will experience troubling things and may face despair, but we cannot lose heart and courage. We can face these things and not completely lose ourselves to these things, because Jesus is preparing a place for us. He is the way to this. If we follow Him, then we have the proper path to be with Him in the place He is preparing for us. He said before, He is the way, truth, and life. This directly connects to another thing that Jesus says. He says that those who look upon Him look upon the Father. To see Christ is to see God. And Jesus also promises that a helper, the Holy Spirit, will come to them to assist them in their missions. To the disciples, this is all a mystery, but to us, we see the final results. We know that we now have the Holy Spirit within us, just like it used to be in the temple. Thanks to these scriptures, we are able to look back at this and now know what Jesus speaks about. Thank you for joining in the reading and understanding of these chapters, and let us all be vigilant in continuing this reading. Please share, like, follow, or whatever you can do to help us reach more people with the Bible reading. Please also check out the High Quality Gospel website for more information and a couple of store items. Thank you, and keep learning.